Today what we're going to talk about is step patterns on a steel shaft. Some folks out there may have noticed them, some may never have noticed them. You just might notice some generic things such as, hey, that's a graphite shaft because it's painted a different color other than chrome, and you have so many different types, and steel most of the time will either come in chrome, and now there's maybe some satin polishing and there's some other various colors and stuff you can get them in. However, for the most part, if there's a color difference, no change in the performance of the shaft, for instance. I know some of the companies are out there making some color options, more just personal touch. But anyway, it's great. So let's talk for a quick second. A couple things to be aware of. So there are, for the most part, with every, again, just talking about irons right now. With irons, we have two different, tips here, two different shafts. If we look at the two of them from a distance, they look kind of similar in a lot of ways, except I can tell you that there is a difference. This is what's called a tip gauge, and you can see that in particular, right here, there's a number that says 0.355. That 0.355 is called tip diameter, and the other one that we're going to be looking at today is 0.370. So the 0.370, 0.355 is just simply 15/100ths of an inch of tapering of the shaft at the last inch. So this will be an exaggeration of my fingers coming in versus being parallel to one another. All right. So again, some people might have heard it. If you've ever heard of a parallel tip shaft, that would be closer to 370. If it's a taper tip, it would be tapered down to 0.355 inches, that is, within the last inch. So again, to illustrate that point, again, we're going to use that. We'll start off with the 355 tapered. The 355 taper that you'll notice as we stick it through, it barely gets through, but you can see the fact that it is all the way into the 0.355. So then if we take a second and put it out into the 370 hole, you can see that it goes well beyond. Right, so 15/100ths of an inch in this case made an awful big difference. Okay, so very important to keep in mind for the second part of what we're going to talk about later on, and it'll all tie together. And this shaft in particular, if we go to put it into that 355, you can see that it just does not want to go, right? But if we put it into the 370 hole, wow, there it is. Okay, so again, if you're at home and you ever have a question, these gauges are pretty cheap. You can get them from all the different club makers still, Golfsmith, Golfworks. You could probably search a ton of places online. These gauges come very handy. This particular one also measures some grip size along the top. If you follow some basic instructions, in this bottom part here will measure the butt diameter of a shaft for you, just in case you need that as well, because again, it can be important for grip size. However, let's keep moving along. So again, there are two shafts here that for the most part are almost the same length, maybe about a half of an inch, maybe less of an inch difference in length. Right? But what we're going to take a quick look at, and it might be hard to see on the camera, but I promise you I'll do my best to represent there. You can see where the True Temper logo is right there. And then you can kind of make out where there is a step pattern right underneath my finger. Right, so there's one, and there's the end of the step pattern. So if we were to measure that, we would find that it is approximately 1 inch in length. So the Dynalite XP iron shaft that we talked about in the last video, its step patterns, even when you go way up here, still are approximately 1 inch in length, inch to 1.25 inches. All right, so that's what classifies this particular iron shaft. It's going to have a little bit more feel because in the overall length, you have a bunch of small step patterns bunched together in the middle of the shaft. So when you bend this, it's going to have a very, very definitive bend point, right? And generally, it'll be a bit on the lower side. Staying in the same family of Dynamic Gold, or in True Temper, excuse me, True Temper, this happens to be the Dynamic Gold shaft that many people have seen. It's been very popular for a long time. There's that same little logo there, and if you can make it out, here's where the first part of the step pattern is, and here's where the ending point is. So if we were to measure that, it measures out at approximately 1.875 inches. If this was a 370 tip diameter, it would be 2 inches in length and width. And all that really means is now you have those wider step patterns and they're spread out more out throughout the entire shaft. So this is going to be a much stiffer golf club, and its bend point is going to be much higher. So this would be consideration for a better player. That's a really big part of understanding, how shafts work and the step patterns. It's pretty simple. If you have a bunch of step patterns that are put into a small area, it's going to create a spot on the shaft where it's going to bend very specifically. If you create the step patterns over a larger area, longer length, now it's going to defer that bend over a larger surface area. Again, most of the time for better players, different swing tempos and things like that. Again, if you ever have any questions about things like that, I would absolutely encourage you to get with a good club maker and be able to test them side by side, preferably with the same type of head on it. Again, so if you see a difference in ball flight, if you need to raise or lower or things like that, but also something as simple as feel can make a big difference of why you'd want to potentially buy a shaft. However, again, paying attention, in my opinion, to not losing performance over feel, okay, because that's a real big one. That's just how I've always felt about it. And going back to this shaft for just a brief second, this is just a proprietary shaft. You can see that the step patterns are not as definitive as the other ones, right? So not so hard, square stepped and such. So with something like this, again, it's going back into that idea of deferring the bend over a larger length. This also happens to be a much lighter shaft than these, even though they're the same length. So benefits of lighter shafts versus heavier. Heavier shaft, stronger tempo, stronger player, more, you're going to hit it a little bit further distance. Lighter shaft is going to be for somebody who has less swing speed, maybe a modest tempo in some fashion or form when you're hitting the golf ball. All right. Now, I'm sure that this subject is going to wind up creating a lot of comments and questions. I absolutely feel free to check it out on my Facebook page at Beyond the Green Golf and watch the videos and post any comments or questions, okay? Well, thanks so much for taking the time to listen. Have a great day, and we'll see you guys real soon.